What's up, grinders? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be checking out a video from Matt vs. the World titled I Got My JLPT Results Back ... Okay, so this will be interesting, but my first thing is, why do you have a new channel, Matt vs. the World, when you have your Matt vs. Japan channel? It's got like 235k subs, bro. Just why did you start a new channel? I don't get it. Maybe you want to rebrand yourself as, you know, Matt vs. the World as opposed to Matt vs. Japan, but this is going to take you so long to get back to where you were. Like, I really don't understand this. And also, should I refer to you as Matt vs. the World or Matt vs. Japan now? Like, I don't know what's going on. Now, I saw a previous video of his. I didn't have time to react to it because he actually deleted it. He was talking about he went for an exam, a JLPT blah, 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 blah exam. Okay, so he was basically finally getting an exam result for Japanese. He'd never had it before. Now, a lot of people are like, why didn't you have an exam result before? Like, in fact, this is actually not that strange. When you actually learn a language just to use it, you generally, unless you have an actual need for an exam, you don't go and get one. So the fact that he got one, like, ages after getting to fluent in Japanese is not really that surprising to me. Like, I got my freaking Esperanto one right here, you know, my C1 exam certificate, literally just for this channel. I had no other reason for it. So I think he went for it because he wants to get citizenship or something. But anyway, let's watch the damn video.
Hey guys, so a couple days ago, I finally got back my JLPT N1 test score results. And so in this video, I'm going to be revealing what score I got, talking about a little bit about what my experience was taking the test, and then also giving advice about how I recommend you think about the JLPT if you're studying Japanese. So without further ado, I'll just tell you my score because I know that's what most of you just want to hear. I'll be honest, I did a lot worse than I thought that I did. On the language knowledge and reading sections, I got a perfect score, and on the listening section, I got 69 out of 80.
My poorest result was for my listening as well in my Esperanto exam, because listening generally is so fast-paced and is just filled with so much knowledge, and also generally a lot of numbers. And numbers are just a pain in the ass to remember, even in my native language.
If you want to hear my excuse, of course, everything I'm about to say is just an excuse, and
if you want to hear my excuse, you know, I never had to do this when I was doing my exam and, like, afterwards, because, like, before I went into the exam, I actually hyped up my entire community over the fact that I might actually fail. I was like, guys, I don't know, I think I'm gonna fucking fail because, like, I'm paranoid about exams and stuff. So when I came out and I passed quite well, I was like, like, I don't need to make excuses.
So feel free to call it cope and feel free to make fun of me because I know I deserve it because I was way too cocky about this. But basically,
yeah, that's the problem. You can't be cocky about these things, bro. You can't be cocky. Because if you overpromise and underdeliver, people are gonna shit on you. But if you underpromise and then overdeliver, people are gonna be golf clapping for you. But they'll do seal claps, okay? Then that's basically what I did. I was like, oh, guys, I don't know if I'm gonna pass. Actually, I wasn't sure if I was gonna pass because I'm terrible with exams. So it wasn't me, like, applying that marketing rule, but also it's just common sense, you know? I'm not gonna be like, even if I knew I was gonna pass, just walk and be like, fucking bros, I'm gonna smash this. Fucking don't even know what I'm doing here, fucking loser. If you doing the exam for real, you know, I'm not gonna do that stuff because then if I do actually fail, by God, publicly, that would be so bad.
it looks like I probably missed about 3 problems here. Because of the way that the questions are weighted, like, it's not like you...
Matt, you're trying to justify the questions you got wrong.
You just miss a certain number of points for each question. Missing one question can make you lose way more points than others.
Yeah, so for my best section was my speaking section. The one where you have a conversation. It makes sense because I was an Esperanto YouTuber. That's all I did was fucking talk non-stop, okay? So, like, in fact, I kept talking to the point where they're like, please stop. You've passed the time. You're done now. I was like, oh, okay. You know, like, that was not a problem for me. And I got perfect results on that except for 1 point loss. And I don't know what that point was. What did they cut me back on? I'm not sure what it is.
And basically what happened was I zoned out on one of the questions and totally missed the prompt and then had to make, like, a blind guess on one of them. And then right after that, I started thinking in my head, like, okay, I know I just missed a question, so now I probably won't get a perfect score. So what's the best score that I can still get if I don't miss any other ones? And then before I knew it, I had missed half of the next prompt. And that next problem was one of the ones where there's like one prompt and then multiple...
Well, that wasn't a problem for me. Zoning out wasn't a problem. I was so I was so terrified of missing anything that I was like hyper focused listening, going, okay. I was probably too focused because like if any detail popped up during the listening section of the Esperanto one, and by the way, guys, I know I'm comparing Esperanto to Japanese. It's fucking light years apart, okay? I'm not trying to say like my achievements are anywhere near the same, okay? I'm just pointing out the fact that, you know, I've gone through a similar type of experience, okay? And I'm just sharing my input. Not like linguistic levels or whatever. So what I was getting at is like, I was so hyper-focused that if I heard anything that I thought was important, I would focus in on that and then I'd miss the other stuff. And sometimes the other stuff was also important stuff. Because you'd be like, okay, try remember that. Hold that number in the back of my head. What was it, 1986 or something? Okay, cool. Oh god, now they're talking about the freaking 1970s. Was it also the 70s before? Or did I misunderstand? You know, that's what you're doing.
Multiple questions for that prompt. And so if you miss the prompt, you miss multiple questions. And then I missed the other one too. So yeah, for me, it's really embarrassing and I'm pretty disappointed in myself. But overall, it's still a very high score overall.
I think the reason it's probably embarrassing is because obviously you presented yourself as being a Japanese expert. Okay, that's what you've done. I've never presented myself as an expert in anything. Not even my own native language. So if I fuck up, it's okay.
And it still counts as like the C1 equivalency. It's basically like within the highest category.
Okay, so C1 equivalent. So he did a C1 equivalent exam. They don't have a C2 equivalent over there for you guys? What would be the C2 equivalent for the Japanese community? I guess you just don't have it. So I guess we did do a similar equivalent exam.
Of passing the test. So
let me just for 1 second just rub this in a bit more, just scratch the side of my head with my certificate. You know, I find every reason to pull this out nowadays. Like I'll be like sitting here and I'll scratch my chin. I'll just be like, with the exam, my wife would be like, put it down. We know it's your fucking e-penis. Put it down. And I'm like, but I paid for this. You know.
That being said, I kind of want to talk about how I would recommend you think about the JLPT if you're learning Japanese.
Okay, guys. Evildea is going to prepare for the N1 Japanese. Let's go.
So the first thing I want to talk about is, should you take the JLPT at all?
Probably not, but it would be very funny if I tried to.
Well, I think it depends on what level we're talking about. You know, obviously the JLPT has 5 levels. There's N1 through N5. And to be honest, I don't really see any point in taking N5, N4, or N3. Because even if you pass N3, that doesn't signify that you have a level of Japanese ability that you can really use in any professional setting.
I don't know. I disagree with that, okay? Like, some people, they like to have actual milestones that show where they are in their learning journey. Sure, you might not be able to use it realistically in the world out there, but like some people, those milestones are important. It gives them something to work towards. So I guess my caveat here would be, it's obviously dependent on what you want to achieve, right? Like, or how you like to learn. Like, I've thought about doing the HSK exams. Like, I don't see a point personally for doing 1 to 3 because I think I'd be fine, okay? But I've thought about doing 4 and 5, but at the same time, I'm also like, I don't want to have to learn a whole heap of shit that's very specific to the exam that I just don't care about. You know, like, I don't want to learn how to talk about fucking fax machines or whatever.
Right? Like, that's not going to get you some job you couldn't get otherwise or help you get some visa that you couldn't get otherwise. It's really, as far as I see, just a way that you can, you know, benchmark your own Japanese ability. And so...
Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that.
I know a lot of people use the JLPT as just a way to in just that way, right? They use it to benchmark their own Japanese ability. It's a goal that they set for themselves. It's something that they like strive towards, and then they can have a sense of accomplishment when they take the test. And I totally understand that, but I don't think that you should use the JLPT for that reason, but I'm going to explain that a little bit later. When it comes to N2 and N1, I actually do think it's worth taking these precisely because it can unlock certain employment and visa options in Japan. There's this idea that I hear...
So he's looking at it from a very utilitarian... Oh, shit, sorry, I punched the mic. Hope you guys didn't just get deafened by that. He's looking at it from a very utilitarian perspective, as in, is there immediate material value from doing this? Well, to me, these exams can be both. They can be both material value, and then they can also be, you know, personal value.
Here, talked about relatively frequently, which is that if you're good enough at Japanese, you can talk your way out of needing a JLPT certificate, right? Like you can go to a job interview in Japan, and if you're just fluent enough at Japanese, they'll be so impressed, they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna hire you, or I'll...
Or you could start a YouTube channel and start selling courses. Sorry, I couldn't help myself.
give you the job, and they won't even ask about the JLPT. That's something that I feel like might actually happen in the West, but it's very unlikely to happen in Japan because Japanese people are very strict about doing things by the book, having certifications, having everything look good on paper. And so no matter how good you are at Japanese, even if you're at a level where the JLPT N1 would be very easy for you, a lot of times they're not going to hire you unless you have the certificate because that's just the Japanese way of doing things.
You know, I actually prefer the Japanese way. Even though I hate fucking exams, I think it's good that they actually have certification for for these types of things, okay? And hear me out why. Because if you pass this type of exam, then you've actually proven yourself. Rather than just talked your way, used your fucking, skills to manipulate people socially into getting into a position that you might not actually be, qualified for. Now, I am against institutions and companies saying you must have a diploma in this or that type of thing. However, if they say you must be certified in something and you can literally go self-study at home and then go take the certificate, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like, I'm good with that. I just hate it where they're like, you must do 4 years of this specific course at this specific uni to be considered. That's where I think that shit's completely fucking pointless. It's like in the programming world, okay, because I work as a game programmer. There is actually no real certificates, okay? So that's how they kind of work. They just go based on the institutions that you learnt programming at. However, it is also a lot to do with your ability to worm your way into different things. And I've seen some people get into programming positions who fucking honestly should not be there. They have no clue what they're doing. And I know in the programming world, the quick and easy way to do this shit is people hit you with algorithm tests. And that is just complete, utter stupidity because that is not how programmers operate. Anyway, that was a complete side ramble. Sorry, guys.
And so if you are planning on moving to Japan in the future and working in a Japanese environment or living in Japan for an extended period of time, I think it is a good idea to try to ideally get Japanese and or the JLPT N1 just to unlock certain opportunities to you that might be closed off otherwise. And that's actually why I took it myself, because I want to be able to have every possible visa option open to me for the future going forward. So with that being said, like I said, I don't think there's any objective benefit to JLPT and N5, N4, N3. N2 and N1 probably should take. But with that being said, should you study for the JLPT? And I think the answer in the vast majority of cases is no. And that's the most important idea that I really want to get across in this video. And the reason for this is that, like I said, I only really think JLPT N1 is truly what's valuable from an employment standard. And so should you study for the JLPT N1 in that case? Well, I would say no, because when you're talking about what level you need to be at in order to pass the JLPT N1, if you're at the level where you can read the average Japanese nonfiction book fairly comfortably, and you can turn on the average anime and watch it comfortably with no subtitles, or even just the average Japanese YouTube video and understand it with no subtitles without much challenge, then you're going to be able to pass the JLPT N1 without much struggle, even without any particular study. And that's my experience. If you want to get a perfect score, that's much harder, right? That's something I failed to do. I think in that case, you either need to just be smarter than me and a better test taker than me, have even better Japanese ability than me, or practice and actually study for the test, right? Or maybe take it multiple times.
I don't think you need to get a perfect score. Like, it seems kind of pointless to me. A lot of the times you can get like tripped over by stupid shit, like you just phase out or you focus in on the wrong thing. Like, as long as you pass the exam, that's all that matters at the end of the day.
So if you really want to get a perfect score, then maybe, yeah, you should actually study for the test. But in reality, there's no reason to try to get a perfect score on the JLPT N1.
Exactly. Just pass. That's all that matters.
Because when you apply for a job or something, right, they don't look at what your score was. All they look at is, did you pass the test, yes or no? And so on paper, if somebody just barely got over the line to pass and they almost failed, and someone else got a perfect score, when they turn in their job resumes, they look the same on paper.
But this is one point where I will do a little bit of pushback, okay? For the average Joe who's getting a job, 100% agree, doesn't matter. However, if you're teaching the language, and that is your career path, you probably want to try get the best score that you can, because that not only shows your potential, clients that you really know what you're on about, but it also finds the holes in your own abilities. Especially when you're playing the role of a teacher, you want to be the best that you can. That way you can provide the best learning opportunity for your potential students. And I do know that you teach Japanese, so you should be endeavoring to do the best that you can.
So there's absolutely no reason to get a perfect score on the test unless you just really want the bragging rights, which honestly I think is kind of silly, right? Whereas on the other hand, if you want to pass the test, that's a much lower bar. And like I said, if you just have the ability to function professionally in Japanese, then it's not going to be hard for you. And if the whole reason why I'm saying that it's actually good to have N1 in the first place is so that you can work at a Japanese company, right? Or have opportunities to live in Japan. And so if you're going to work at a Japanese company, you need to have real Japanese ability anyway. If you just somehow game the test and like get really good at test taking because you practice JLPT test taking, but you don't have the true raw ability to back it up, and then you pass, and then you somehow get a job at a Japanese company, that's not actually going to be a good position to be in, right? Because you're not going to have the ability to keep up with what's expected of you, right?
Yeah, obviously I agree with all this. How is this? Most of this is actually not about your exam and your experiences with it and your overall feelings. Like, I made a video where I dived into, my feelings overall.
So I think that, if you're someone who, as a goal for yourself, you want to get to the point where, yeah, you can watch Japanese content without subtitles comfortably. You can read Japanese newspapers, blogs, books, these types of things comfortably. Then that's your real goal. And you don't need to study for the JLPT. Just achieve that goal you have of becoming proficient in Japanese in general.
100%. Yep.
And then you'll be able to pass the test no problem, like whatsoever. Like, I'm a bad test taker. I always have been. And I still was able to do very well on this test just off my raw Japanese ability. And there's people that have been studying Japanese for a way shorter time period than me and did better than me on the test without actually studying for it at all, just off their raw Japanese ability. So that's basically my argument for why you don't need to study for the test, right?
This is a good video overall, but it kind of looks bad after his previous video, which I think he deleted or he hit or whatever. His previous video was basically him walking out, fucking cock hanging out, cockiest motherfucker in the planet, going, bro, I smashed that exam, I did so good, there was some fucking other chick in there, what the fuck was she doing in there? Like, bro, you were like peacocking to the moon. Okay, I was gonna react to it. And I watched a little bit of it. Like, I didn't watch the whole thing. So I watched a little bit of it and I was like, oh, I'm going to come back and do a react to this. And then he'd already deleted it by that point. And I was like, oh, well, okay, there's nothing I can do now.
You just get good at Japanese overall, you'll be able to pass it. I can guarantee you that. You're not going to struggle with it if you have basic Japanese competency. But what about studying for the test just as a way to benchmark your own ability or have a certain path laid out to you to guide your studies? Because
I don't think you should study for tests. Yes, it's smart. Okay, obviously studying for a specific test is smart because then you can prepare yourself for, the type of content you're going to encounter. But it also doesn't give you a realistic evaluation of your own abilities if you are basically selecting the vocab that you need for that test or whatever it is, you're focused in on that type of stuff. I don't think that's smart. Like, if you're trying to get a realistic assessment. Now, if this is absolutely crucial to get a job, then yeah, do whatever you can, bro. Like, fucking get those papers under the table, pay it, whatever, learn the shit.
I think a lot of people, when they come into learning Japanese, the JLPT becomes like their kind of default curriculum, right? It's like, if you're studying Japanese in a university setting, then maybe they give you Genki or they give you they have a curriculum they use at that university. But if you're self-studying, then that can be a tricky thing, right? It's like, how should I guide my study? There's all these resources out there. Getting fluent in Japanese is such a large, vague goal. It can be really nice to have something like a set of proficiency levels, like the JLPT, where you can just be like, well, I'll study for the N5 and then N4 and N3, and then by the time I get to N1, I'll be fluent in Japanese. I totally get the appeal of that. But in reality, I don't think that's a good way to go about studying Japanese, because if you study for the JLPT test, you'll get good at the test and you'll become able to take it, but that won't necessarily mean that you have true competency, right? There are people who actually have studied their way to the point of they can pass the JLPT N1, but they're not good at Japanese at all. In fact, this is a quite common experience in Japan, is meeting people that have N1 and they can barely hold their own in a basic conversation.
how the fuck could you do... Okay, the Japanese test I have heard in the past is that there is no speaking component, like a conversation component with people. And maybe that's why they can get past it. They can, like, you know, somehow get around that or whatever. But, like, to me, it's crazy that you could do a C1 level equivalent exam and then not be able to converse. Like, the guys who did my Esperanto exam, man, they ran me through the ringer. I got hit with the most bizarre random of shit, okay? Like, there is no way you're walking away from that exam and not being able to have a proper conversation. That just sounds bizarre to me. There must be something really, really off with these exams. I have heard people complaining about the Japanese exams in some way, something to do with the speaking component or something, but sounds like they need a massive reform if you can walk away from a C1 level equivalent exam and still struggle to speak.
Just about everyday topics, right? There's this other kind of idea that goes around of like, if you're really good at Japanese, it's possible to be good at Japanese, but still not be able to pass the test because the JLPT is so hard. And that, honestly, I think is a misnomer. My experience is that if you have a well-rounded set of abilities in Japanese, both in terms of reading and listening, you can conversate in Japanese, you can read basic things, the test will not be hard for you. That, I think, is the reality. And honestly, I think some people might be coping really hard when they try to say that the N1 is super hard or something like that.
I would say, though, that there is some people who the idea of an exam is absolutely terrifying to the point where they basically become unable to act. Like, they're unable to act, unable to act. Even though they know what they're meant to be doing, they're just like, they literally freeze up. Now, this is obviously a very, very small subset of people. And again, I don't know the Japanese exam situation.
Right. At least if we're talking about passing, like I said. So basically what this means is that if you get good at Japanese in general, you'll be able to pass the test. If you study,
which makes sense,
for the test, you'll be able to pass the test, but you won't necessarily build overall Japanese ability.
That I don't understand. If I'm looking at it from the type of C1 exam I did, there's no way you could just study for the test and then not actually speak the language at the same time. Like, that's just... it's insane. I'm actually curious. This might be a broader question, and we might need to investigate this as a community, but are these equivalent tests across for all these different, you know, languages, and when they say C1, are they actually testing the same level stuff? Like, is the Spanish C1 level exam the same level of, let's say, difficulty? Well, not difficulty, because obviously everyone comes from a different perspective, but I mean, is it covering the same type of expectations as someone doing a C1 for German or a C1 for Russian or whatever? Now, obviously the Japanese and Chinese, it's a little bit hard because they've got their own testing system, which doesn't line up perfectly. The Chinese one's a complete mess and they're right in the middle of freaking redoing it right now. But I am curious to hear from anyone who's taken multiple, let's say, C1 exams. What is your thoughts? Was there one that was like strangely more easy than others? Not because of the language, but just because of the type of content that you were asked to cover. Like, I would love to read about that.
If you don't have the ability to back that up, really, what good is that for you in the long term? And in general, even if you try to take some kind of hybrid approach where you're studying, your vocab based on the JLPT, but you also do kind of general immersion and stuff, it's still just going to be less than optimal because the JLPT curriculum, in my opinion, is just not a very good curriculum. Like, it's not really made by people that have learned Japanese themselves, right? It's made by native speakers that are trying to imagine what will be useful to people that are learning Japanese.
I'm guessing that's the same with Chinese, but I do want to jump back to one other thing that I was thinking about. Now, this is a bit of a hot take. This might not actually be true at all, okay? But I have a suspicion that the Esperanto C1 exam might actually be more in-depth and more difficult than, say, other language C1 exams, simply due to the fact that Esperanto was born as a constructed language, although it's now spoken, natively by a few thousand people. Its origins means that it needs to always prove itself more than others, and therefore I have a suspicion that they go harder on testing us. Like, our own community goes harder on testing ourselves, just so that we don't fall into the trap of giving out certificates to people who legitimately have not earned them, and then that can somehow later come back and bite us in the ass. But that is a hot take, and it's not based in any proof whatsoever. I just have a suspicion just based on the psyche of Esperanto speakers.
It's also centered around business Japanese and being in a Japanese work environment. And like, when you're at like the N5 or like N4 type of level, like, you're not going to be in a Japanese work environment anyway, so it doesn't matter whether you know those word environment words at that level yet or not. it's going to be a much better way to go about learning Japanese, to just find content you actually like, whether that's anime or YouTube videos or streamers or whatever. Learn the language that is comprehensible to you and is actually interesting to you. Build your base of ability that way. And then later, if you need to broaden your vocabulary, learn more words used in the office, then just watch some dramas that take place in the office, right? Or like, read a manga that takes place in a work environment. You can learn all those words a lot more fun and a lot more organically, right? Like generally the list of grammar points and everything that the JLPT has are just not very well put together in my opinion. And generally you just don't need them. That's the thing overall that, I've been saying on my channel forever, is a lot of people, they want some like predefined path to follow when they're learning a language. Like they want a list of vocabulary, a list of grammar points. But the bottom line is you're going to get better faster and have a better time if you just let go of that and you don't use those things, right? Just find content that you like and learn the stuff that comes up. And if you do that, eventually you'll know everything you need to know. By definition, if a word never comes up anywhere except on some list, you don't need to know it. And who knows, maybe you'll need it to get a perfect score on the test. But like I said, you don't need to get a perfect score on the test. And if you just get good at Japanese overall, you'll be able to do plenty fine on the test. I can guarantee.
I agree with everything that he's saying. Everything that he's saying so far. I just feel like it's coming from a different place. I don't know what to think about this video so far. So obviously he didn't come back with the results that he wanted. He showed his results there, which was honest of him, showed what he got. I don't even know if that is the full results, what you would expect from an exam. Guys, let me know if you've taken the JLPT down in the comment section below. But then he's basically spent the rest of this video just saying that the exam is pretty much useless anyway, unless you really need it for like work purposes. And it doesn't represent, what people need in Japan, blah, blah, blah. I feel like because he was so cocky in the past, he feels in some way he needs to justify why he did not get a perfect score. And realistically, if it was just anyone else, I would say, why would you matter? It doesn't matter, bro. You passed the exam. Be happy. You don't need a perfect score. Move on. Do something else. But I feel like Matt feels that he has to almost have a perfect score in order to keep, his image type of thing. And in some ways I can see yes, because that's the profile that he's built up. But at the same time, I don't think, no, you don't have to, bro. You've learnt the language. You've proven yourself. You passed the exam now. Great. If there's any more exams that are higher than this, as a YouTuber who specializes in Japanese, I would recommend you go do it. But there's a lot of justification happening here that I don't think is needed. Okay, I'm curious to see what the comment section's got to say. Okay, well, we've got his own comment. Fate loves irony. I did poorly precisely because I got lost in thinking about how easy the test was instead of actually focusing on listening. I would not be wording it like that, bro. The reason why is it makes you look like you're looking big-headed right now, okay? You're like, well, I just didn't focus. It was just too easy. Like, it's not a good look. Don't do that. Definitely a lesson in humility. For the record, the content of the test was not at all challenging. The only challenge was fighting my ADHD and paying attention to something boring / cope. I feel like this is definitely cope. It may be true, but it looks more like cope, okay? Listening is by far the hardest part of the test because of how unbelievably boring it is. This was not true for the Esperanto one, okay? The Esperanto one was actually hard. The C1 level exam. It was actually hard. And I can legitimately say I am fluent in Esperanto, okay? It was hard because there was so many numbers and dates and information related to those dates. So maybe I'm just bad with numbers, but I found it legitimately hard. And I am fluent in the language. Zoning out on the listening part is pretty much what I've heard most difficult about the test, since it's often really damn boring. Okay, there just must be something different about the Japanese test. Seriously, it must be something different. The fact that multiple people are actually saying it's just really boring, maybe it fucking is. I want to hear from other Japanese people or other people who've taken the exam in the comment section below. Let me know. It seems like most people are in agreement with him. I don't know. It seems, I don't know what to say. Like, my perspective of a C1 exam is clearly very, very different. Very, very different. Maybe I need to take another one. I do plan to one day. I plan to actually, for my Spanish journey, eventually start taking Spanish certificates as part of, my series, the Dreaming Spanish series, so we can get an idea at which point you can take the different certificates. Now, obviously, I don't speak in that series at the moment, so can't do it at the moment, but I do plan to one day, and I guess one day I'll do the C1 for Spanish. And then I'll know, you know. I'd love to hear from you guys in the comment section what your experience is with the listening part of different language exams, specifically around the C1 level. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll see you all in the next video. And if you're not there, well, you guys are always bitching about the fact that I'm not threatening you enough. So if you're not there, my boy, I'm going to make you listen to 1,000 hours of me whinging in your ear non-stop. I'm gonna put you in a chair, tie you down, and it's just gonna be me in your ear going me, 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 me. 1,000 hours. That's it. You better be there.